Howdy, tonight I'm going to be going over Zombicide Black Plague skills to the best of my abilities. So, if I mess something up, or if you have a question about something I've went over, please let me know. +1 activation. You get 1 activation of any type. Notes, all characters I have seen have this at the yellow danger level. +1 damage. Add 1 damage to your attacks. It comes in 2 forms. +1 damage with a specific type of attack, and +1 damage with a specific piece of equipment. These skills give many characters the ability to kill most abominations when using 2 damage weapons. What does a 2 damage weapon even look like? A hammer. Range 0, 1 die, 4+ to hit, and does 2 damage. If you have +1 damage melee, you now have a 3 damage hammer, and that's pretty good. But one of my favorites is the crossbow. Notice, it uses bolts, which is pretty cool, but this is a crossbow that doesn't require reloading. How does a crossbow not have to be reloaded? It seems like it would take a little bit of work to pull that back each time, but who knows? Its range 0 to 1, it throws 2 dice instead of 1, still hits on 4s and does 2 damage. Give this to somebody like Genevieve that does +1 damage ranged, and oh my, you're dropping lots of attacks that are 3 damage. The spell I chose to go over is Death Strike. It's a pretty basic spell. Range 0 1, 1 die, 4+ to hit, 2 damage. But somebody like Milo that has +1 damage with spells will do 3 damage with this spell. +1 to dice roll. Add 1 to your attack rolls. So if you have a weapon that hits on a 3 and you roll a 2, well, you add +1 to your attack rolls and you just hit. +1 to dice rolls, pretty awesome. It comes in 4 forms. +1 to dice roll for combat. This one's really awesome because it could be a magic, it could be melee, it could be a ranged, any type of attack. Or you can get it with +1 to dice roll magic, +1 to dice roll melee, +1 to dice roll ranged. +1 die. Add 1 dice to your attacks. Forms, +1 die combat, which is very generic, which I love. And Muriel gets this. You have +1 die magic, you have +1 die melee, +1 die ranged. It applies to both weapons when dual wielding for a total of 2 extra dice. Let's look at what that looks like. If you got a short sword and you got +1 die combat or +1 die melee, now you're looking at 2 dice instead of the 1 that it has. Maybe you have a dagger as well. A dagger provides a bonus die to your main hand weapon. So you got +1 die from the dagger, the sword has a die, +1 die from maybe combat or melee, and you're looking at 3 dice. But one of my favorite combos is 2 swords. Just by dual wielding these, you already have 4 attacks. But then if you have +1 die combat or +1 die melee, you're looking at 6 attacks because each one of those swords gets an extra attack. +1 free action. There's lots of different forms of free actions. You can get a free action combat. You can get a free action, a free enchantment action, which this is my least favorite. This allows you to cast an enchantment spell for free each turn. But that means you have to have an enchantment spell, and no characters just start with an enchantment spell. Well, maybe if they had a blue starting ability, it said they started with 1, but it's not in the starting gear list. And if you don't know what an enchantment spell looks like, here's one, Invisibility. And invisibility is pretty decent, but it's not one of my favorites, and if you have a free enchantment action and you haven't found any enchantments, you're going to feel like that's a pretty worthless skill because you can't use it. It's my least favorite of the free actions. You got free magic action, which is better because that could be a spell or an enchantment. You have free action melee, free action move, a free action which is a ranged action. That's pretty cool. A free search action. A free search action's pretty cool because then if you happen to be in a building, you get to search for free as long as there aren't zombies in your square. But one thing to note about one free search action, it still counts against your search limit. So you can't search twice because of this skill. +1 max range. This one's very self-explanatory. With spells, with combat spells, and ranged weapons, your maximum range is 1 larger than what it lists on your attack card. So if it says your range is 1 to 3, it's really 1 to 4. +1 zone per move. Move 1 more zone per move action. This stacks with other movement bonuses. Moving into a zone with zombies still stops your move action, and you still have to pay extra to get out of the original square you were in. So if you're surrounded in zombies, this isn't going to get you out any faster. 2 zones per move action, very similar to the last skill. You move 2 zones per move action. It stacks with other movement bonuses. Moving onto a zone with zombies still stops your move action, and again, you have to pay extra to move out of a cell if you got zombies in it. But if you had 2 zones per move action and you also had +1 zone per move action, you could move 3 zones per move action. Although, if I had both those skills, I would kind of be sad that I didn't have combat skills in those places. Ambidextrous. Treat all weapons and spells as though they had the dual wield symbol. This is a pretty cool skill. So anything that you think is pretty awesome that should be able to be dual wielded can now be dual wielded, assuming there are 2 of them, assuming that you can possibly get 2 of that weapon. But how does one dual wield longbows? Not too sure about that. I know you can dual wield crossbows, but they said, let me go look up ambidextrous real quick. Treat all combat spells, melee, and ranged weapons as though they had the dual wield symbol. That means you could dual wield longbows. I'm not really sure how you would do that. Maybe you would have to have 4 arms, or maybe you would just hold the 2 sticks out in front of you, and your friends would draw the strings, shaft the arrows for you, and release. Maybe that's how you could accomplish it. I don't know, but it would still be pretty cool. Well, it's pretty crazy. Maybe they're magical longbows. But, you know, I think having everything having the dual wield symbol is pretty cool. Barbarian. Replace the total dice you would throw on a melee attack with the number of zombies in your zone. And let me go ahead and read this skill to you. When resolving a melee action, the survivor may substitute the number of dice of his melee weapons he uses with the number of zombies standing in the targeted zone. Skills affecting the dice roll, like +1 die melee, still apply. Alright, so if you got a short sword, which is and there's 5 zombies standing in your cell, you could say, you know what, I want 5 attacks. And that's pretty cool. Some misunderstandings that some people have had with this is, hey, I got a sword, and somebody else is like, oh, I got 2, and I'm a barbarian as well, so I get to throw 10 attacks at those 5 zombies. No, that's not really how it works. It would be way overpowered if that's how it works. My understanding is you total up all the dice you would normally have on your attack, and then you're like, I will use that, or I will use the number of zombies in the cell. And at first, I thought maybe the dagger would help this out. Like, oh, I got a short sword, I got a dagger, I have my short sword replaces, and it gets 5 zombies, so it gets 5 attacks, +1 from the dagger. No, that's not how it works. In the rules, it kind of states that what can affect the number of attacks would be +1 die combat skill, or maybe +1 die melee skill. So that dagger is not going to give you an extra dice because it'd be a little overpowered. I played a barbarians with the king's mace, and I messed up the rule when I first did it. What I said is, oh, I got a king's mace, it has 5 attacks. But now I'm showing off for my friends, the king mace says you get +1 die per friend standing near you. So then I'm like, oh yeah, let's make that 8. Well, that's really overpowered, and I don't think how the game intended it to work, and that's why they explicitly state skill. So what I should have said is I can have 4 dice, or I can have the number of people standing in my cell. And then if I had +1 die combat or melee, then I get to add on to it. So the skill's pretty cool, but if you're playing it incorrectly, it can be way overpowered. Because how Barbarian's supposed to work is maybe you throw 10 dice and you kill half of them. But then the next time you only get to throw 5 dice. And it's kind of this diminishing return aspect to where you don't actually get to wipe the whole field. Blitz. When you kill the last zombie in your zone, you get 1 free move action to use immediately. That's pretty self-explanatory, but pay attention to the word use immediately. You don't get to search, you can't cast a spell, you can't use another ranged action, you can't do anything else. You either take that move or it's forfeit. Bloodlust. Spend 1 action to move up to 2 zones to a zone containing zombies and then attack. So you get movement and an attack, and your movement's up to 2 zones. And this is all for 1 action. It's pretty cool. You got Bloodlust combat, magic, melee, ranged, and this just is a pretty awesome skill. I don't think Bloodlust, magic, or ranged is quite as cool because magic tends to not be as cool at range 0, and most ranged weapons are 1 or more and don't even have a range 0. Plus, if you're using Bloodlust, magic, or range, you better hope there's not friends in that cell that you charge to, because you might actually miss and hurt them. So I'm not too psyched about Bloodlust, magic, and range, but the other ones are pretty cool. Now, it doesn't say anything about movements, but I would apply normal movement rules to these skills. You can't charge, you can't move through a zone containing zombies. You would end your movement when you get to that intervening cell. And if you're leaving your cell, you still got to pay extra actions to get out of it. Born Leader. Give another hero a free action to use in their next turn. From my understanding, it doesn't say anything about using an action to make this happen. So this is pretty cool. You get to give another character a free action to use in their next turn. So maybe you got somebody that's really good at killing, like maybe Silas or Clovis, and you want to give them an extra action to kill stuff on their turn. You just say, hey, you know what, buddy? On your next turn, you get a free action because you're my friend. That's pretty cool. You get to use this once a turn. And it doesn't require an action to use, from my understanding. Break In. You get 1 free action to open doors each turn. You do not need equipment to use this skill. You do not have to roll for opening doors. Opening a door does not make any noise when using this skill. Notes. You can still roll to open a door if you wanted to make noise. So maybe you got a sword and you're like, well, instead of breaking in, I want to attract some zombies. Maybe you want to hit on that door. It doesn't say that you have to use this skill. It says you may. So you could still make noise if you want to. I haven't seen any character with this skill. If anybody knows a character that has this skill, please let me know, because this seems pretty cool and I'd like to use it. Charge. Use as much as you like, each turn for free. Move up to 2 zones. Normal movement rules still apply. If you enter a zone containing zombies, your movement is stopped. It's more expensive to leave your cell. And I kind of see this, I don't know, it seems very similar to Bloodlust, except you don't get the free attack, but you get to do it for free. So, is it a weaker form of Bloodlust? I don't know. Is it extremely similar to Bloodlust? Yes. Please, in the comments, tell me what you think the big difference between Charge and Bloodlust. Yes, I know one you get a free attack for doing it, but this one you get a free movement to get there, and then you can still attack. So let me know what y'all think the differences between Bloodlust and Charge are. They're very, very similar. I know they're worded a little bit differently, but in actual use, I see them pretty much the same. Maybe you could charge to a cell and then be like, oh, I'm going to pay some extra to get out of that cell and charge somewhere else. But I see them pretty much as the same skill. Collector. This skill will list a zombie type. Each time you kill a zombie of the listed type, you get double the experience for it. This is a dangerous skill. It may have you level one character way too fast, and then you might be spawning orange or red zombie spawn cards when everybody else is still in blue or barely in yellow. So I think this is a dangerous skill. It's interesting. Do y'all know of any character who has this? I haven't seen a guy with Collector. Maybe I overlooked it. Destiny. Once per turn, when you reveal an equipment card you drew, you may discard it to draw a new one. Notes: it can be used with cards gained from any source, even transmutations. This is kind of cool. If you transmute and you're like, I don't really like what I got, you could draw again. It can be used with a torch to help you cycle the deck faster. You may pull a zombie on the second pull. So if you destiny away a sword and then you get a zombie, guess what? You got a zombie. Free reload. You do not have to spend an action to reload weapons that require reloading. The Orcish crossbow is now broken. Well, not really, but the Orcish crossbow is even better. I wouldn't put it in the category of broken. There are some definite broken weapons. This one's not broken, it's just strong when you get free reload. So the Orcish crossbow is a cool melee weapon. It's a cool range weapon. It does 2 damage. On a character like Genevieve, it does 3 damage. So if Genevieve had free reload, that would be pretty amazing. I don't believe that's in her skill range. So I don't believe it's one of her skill choices. But the Orcish crossbow, pretty cool. And if you had free reload on it, that would be pretty amazing. Frenzy. Your weapons get +1 die per wound you have taken. You have Frenzy Combat, Magic, Melee, Ranged, of course the best, Frenzy Combat. But remember those 2 swords I showed you earlier that had 2 attacks each? If your character was almost dead and he had 2 wounds on him, every melee action you would get a bonus 2 die per weapon, giving you 8 attacks. That is ridiculous. But you have to be almost dead to make that work. So, you know, you got to take that with a grain of salt if you would want to let your character get that hurt so you can throw lots of dice. Hit and run. After killing a zombie with a combat attack, you get a free move action to use immediately. Is that combat attack? Let me double check that rule. So hit and run. I want to see if it's melee attack or if it's combat attack. Yeah, it says magic, melee, or ranged. So this is kind of weird because let me go ahead and read you the full rules and explain why I worded it like I did on the screen. The survivor may use this skill for free just after he resolved a magic, melee, ranged action resulting in killing at least 1 zombie. He can then resolve a free move action. The survivor does not spend extra actions to perform this free move action if zombies are standing in his zone. So you don't spend extra actions to perform it. So if there's zombies in your zone and you kill something, you can move away. The weird hit and run aspect here is, I'll get into what I put on the screen in a second, but I could have 15 zombies on me. I could shoot a zombie in a different cell, and then I get a free hit and run because I just performed an attack. So I kind of see hit and run as maybe somebody with a sword, he runs in, he kills somebody, kind of slips out. But you can hit and run by shooting somebody halfway across the map and then move out of the cell of zombies that you're surrounded in, which seems a little bit weird. So let me read what I put on the screen. After killing a zombie with a combat attack, you get a free movement action to use immediately. When you take this action, you can move out of your zone without paying extra movement, let's just say action points, for the zombies in it, which is pretty cool. I think this is a cool skill, but I think it should have to be if you kill a zombie in your cell, but that's not the way they intended it, so I'll play it as intended. It just, to me, it seems like it would be more of a hit and run if you killed a zombie in your cell and then booked it. Hold your nose. After killing a zombie, you get a free search action to use in this turn in the zone where the zombie died. It can be used in any zone, not just buildings. You still can't search more than once a turn. your zone still has to be free of zombies to search. Ironclad. This skill will specify a zombie type. You ignore all wounds from this type of zombie. I don't know of many characters that have Ironclad, but let's go ahead and move on to my note. The Ironclad charm in the Places of Interest campaign does not specify a type, so I think when you use that charm, which only has an effect for 1 turn, you ignore all wounds for 1 turn after using it. So, or for the zombie turn right after you use it, which seems a little overpowered, but you can only use it 1 time. So Ironclad's a pretty cool skill. Ironhide. You have a 5+ armor save without armor. When wearing armor, you add +1 to your armor save roll. With plate mail, you would only fail on a die roll of 1 because plate mail is a 3+. So that's pretty awesome. Imagine if you had a shield, Ironhide, and plate mail. First, you would have to roll a 1. Then your re-roll, because of the shield, would have to be a 1. That's a 1 in 36 chance of that happening. Or let's say you have plate mail, Ironhide, lucky, and a shield. And I know this is taking it to an extreme measure. What are your odds of having all those things? But if you did have all those things, you would have a 1 in 216 chance of being successfully bitten by a zombie. And that just seems broken. Imagine this with a shield and tough. So this is a lot more basic because there are people that have Ironhide and tough. So you have a 1 in 36 chance of being hit. Then the first wound that comes in each round, you're like, nah, that didn't happen. Let's start over. And that seems pretty cool. If you're looking for a tanky character, if you have somebody with Ironhide and tough, or if you had somebody with Ironhide and lucky, I'm not sure if that exists, but oh my, that would be broken. Iron Rain. Replace the total dice you would throw on a ranged attack with the number of zombies in the targeted zone. Notes. The only way to increase this is with +1 die combat or +1 die ranged. So again, it reads just like the Barbarian skill we've already went over. Now, something I like a whole lot is having Iron Rain with the longbow. You hit on 3+, which means you hit really consistently. If you have somebody that has +1 to dice roll ranged, that means you're hitting on 2+, which is amazing. So if you have a cell that's really full of walkers, which that's the first thing on the targeting priority list, or walkers and Deadeye archers, or NPCs, which that tends to be what your cells fill up with, is lots of walkers. When you get in the red range, you just get a ton of walkers all over the board. So if you get to Iron Rain and shoot cells with a longbow that hits on either 2+ if you have an amazing character or 3+ on just a normal ordinary character, you're dropping huge amounts of walkers. And one of the cool parts is, it's kind of cool the longbow doesn't kill the abominations, because when you roll your second roll on that cell, you still get a ton of extra dice for everything you can't kill, like the fatties and the A-bombs or necromancer or anything on a priority list that takes 2 damage that you can't touch. They stay there and they still add to that dice pool. So you can just wipe entire waves of walkers at the end of the game with a longbow. And this is amazing. But even more amazing is the Chaos Longbow. You shoot this thing. If you get 4 more hits on a ranged action with this weapon, you create Dragonfire in the targeted zone. This is so broken. If you're throwing 8 or 9 dice at a cell, you're pretty much guaranteed Dragonfire. It's not a guarantee, but it's close. So this is an amazing weapon. And you roll 4 dice on a 4+, the odds of creating Dragonfire are fairly low, but when you start adding extra skills into it, especially things like Iron Rain, you're just dropping Dragonfire all over the board nonstop. If you watch some of my missions for the Wolfsburg campaign, I did just that. I had some bonuses, and it's like Dragonfire, 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 Dragonfire. Nothing could stand up to the guys. It's just awesome. Is that all you got? Negate a single wound by discarding the equipment cart. This one's pretty cool. Another cool thing about it is you can shrug off abomination attacks in this way. Abomination hits you. Normally it's like you don't get an armor save. You're like, nah, I'll just drop this piece of equipment. You didn't hurt me. Jump. You may use this skill once a turn to leap over a zone containing zombies. Note, you still have to pay extra to get out of your zone if there are zombies in it. You do not pay movement or extra actions for zombies in the zone you jumped over, and you must have line of sight on the zone you land in. Lifesaver. You can use this skill once during each activation, and it's free to use. Choose a zone that is within range 1 of you. That zone contains at least 1 zombie. Move all the survivors into that zone into your zone. This is not a movement and does not cost the dragged characters any actions. But the recipients could be like, nah, I got this. I got these zombies. I'm staying. And then they die. But you can save your buddies that are trapped by zombies that couldn't get out any other way. This is a pretty cool skill. Lock it down. This skill costs 1 action to use and allows you to close a door in your cell that is open. This is so broken. So very broken. Since the only thing that can break open in doors is an Abominator, which doesn't even come in the standard set. You would have to be playing that abomination anyway. Just being able to like close the door and be like, nah, you stay on the other side. This skill is just broken. Really, really broken. When the door is reopened, it does not cause the building to be respawned. And that makes sense. You've already been inside. You know there aren't zombies in it. Does any character get this? I haven't seen any character that has this skill. And honestly, I'm thinking no character should. This is probably one of the most broken skills in the game. If it's actually, in fact, in the game. I don't know if any characters have it. Loud. Once during each of your turns, you can make a huge amount of noise. Until the end of the next turn, this cell is considered to have the highest noise. This can help save your buddies and bring the zombies towards you instead of them. Notes: if 2 survivors do this, the most recent one that was executed is the one with the highest noise value. So you could be like, I'm going to make a lot of noise. And then you could be like, nah, you're not saving the buddies. It's going to be me. I'm going to make more noise. Low profile. You'll never be hit by other survivors' ranged or magic misses. This is pretty cool. Dragon fire will still kill you. It's not an attack. It's an effect. Lucky. You may re-roll all the dice from any of your actions or armor rolls. You can use this once per roll, and you must keep the new result. This skill stacks with other re-roll mechanics, like having armor and a shield. That should say like having armor and a shield. I think I was going to put that in there. It says having blank and armor. So having a shield and armor allows you re-rolls in your armor saves. Then if you're lucky, you get to re-roll it again. Mana Rain. Replace the total number of dice you would throw on a magic attack with the number of zombies in the targeted zone. We went over this. This is the 3rd skill that does this. The only way to increase this is with +1 die combat or +1 die magic. Marksman. Your ranged and magic misses do not hit other survivors, and you get to pick your targets instead of following ranged priority. That speaks for itself. It's pretty simple. So you get to pick your targets, pretty cool, and you're never going to hit your bricks. Matching set. When you search and find an item with a dual wield symbol, you may search the equipment deck for another copy of that card. When done, shuffle the equipment deck. This seems just like a really fun skill. Do y'all know if any character has this? Oh look, fireball. I just pulled a fireball. It throws 3 dice. Oh my gosh, I just found a second fireball. I throw 6 dice with my fireball attack. Maybe you're Muriel, and you're like, I have +1 die combat, so you throw 8 dice. This is just a really cool skill to pick. I picked fireball just because fireball is one of my favorite spells when they're dual wielded. It's kind of like the swords. I really love those too. But matching set just seems cool. If somebody has this, tell me. I want to play that character. Point blank. Treat all ranged weapons as having a minimum range of 0. Follow these rules when attacking at range 0s. Your misses do not hit other survivors, and you may pick your targets. It's kind of like Marksman, but it's somebody who's really good up close, not so good far away. When you're attacking people in your cell, you're not going to hit when you're attacking in your cell, you're not going to hit your buddies, and you get to pick your targets. But when you're further away, you can't see them quite as good. You might hit your buddies, and you don't get to pick your targets. Reaper. After an attack, kill one extra zombie type that was killed in the attack. You get Reaper Combat, Reaper Magic, Reaper Melee, Reaper Range. You all know Combat's the one I like. But how this works is you can be like, oh, I'm gonna attack. I killed 2 fatties, a runner, and a walker. And you can be like, oh, there's still a runner up. So I killed a runner in my initial attack. Let's make that extra runner die too. And this is just pretty cool. It's only 1 extra. You can't say, well, I killed a fatty, I killed a walker, and a runner. Let me kill 1 extra of each. No, you have to pick 1 extra zombie to kill. But it's a pretty cool skill. Regeneration. At the end of each game round, remove all wounds on your character. Notes. This skill cannot bring dead characters back to life. If your character's dead, he is in fact dead. He doesn't get to regenerate. Roll 6 plus 1 die. And again, there's 4 forms of this: the combat, the magic, melee, the ranged. It's a pretty cool skill. If you had a good roll and you got a lot of 6s, you get to pick up that number of dice and roll extra dice on the attack. So if you rolled 5 dice and 3 of them are 6s, you get to add 3 more dice into that pool, and then you roll those. Let's say 2 more were 6s. Now that 8 dice just turned into 10. This is a super cool mechanic, but it is luck-based. Sometimes you're going to get it, sometimes you don't. I like skills that are a lot more consistent, like plus 1 die melee. Pretty awesome. I know how many attacks I'm getting. Yes, I could miss. It's still kind of luck-based, but I like the consistency of knowing how many dice I'm going to toss. Some of you are probably like, this skill's amazing. I love it on characters. But again, it's just kind of like, well, what if I don't roll a 6 in that attack? So it's just not my cup of tea. Rotten. At the end of any turn in which you did not make noise or attack, you get the Rotten token. When you have the Rotten token, you are completely ignored by zombies. Notes. You lose this token when you attack or make noise, which that makes sense. Even with the Rotten token, you must still spend extra actions to leave a zone containing zombies. I guess maybe you gotta like walk around them carefully while you're moving, and that's why it still costs the extra action. It takes more time to get out of the cell. Scavenger. You can search any zone, not just while in buildings. I'm not a big fan of this skill, but I haven't seen anybody with it. Anybody know of a character that has Scavenger? Search, plus 1 card. Draw an extra card when you search. Let's say you draw 2 cards and get a torch. In the next turn, you get to draw 3 cards. This is amazing for cycling a deck. This is a super cool skill. Shove. Take all the zombies in your zone and move them 1 zone away in any direction of your choosing. Notes. Both zones have to share a clear path. You can't shove zombies through walls, over a rampart, or through closed doors. You can push them out of a vault or through an open door. So that's pretty cool. Slippery. You do not spend extra activations to leave a cell containing zombies, but your movement is still stopped when you enter a cell containing zombies. That's pretty self-explanatory. You don't have to pay extra to leave a cell when there's zombies in it. That's pretty cool. Spellbook. All your combat spells, enchantments in your inventory are considered to be in your hands. So it's kind of like they're in a book instead of on scrolls. But, something you must note, you still must choose 2 for attacking purposes. You can't be like, well, I got 4 fireballs and 2 disintegrates. I'm casting them all with one action. No, you still got to pick something to be in your left hand and something to be in your right hand. You may have lots of stuff in your inventory, but you still only get to attack with 2 weapons. Spellcaster. You get 1 spell or enhancement action each turn. Basically, this is +1 magic action. Sprint. You can use this skill once a turn for the cost of 1 movement action. You may move 2 or 3 zones. That's pretty cool. Entering a zone with zombies stops your movement, and it still costs extra activations to get out of a cell that has zombies in it. Super Strength. All melee attacks are treated as 3 damage. Wow. You can kill abominations at the blue level if you get this, if you start with this. You still need to kill this is worded backwards. You still need to use Dragonfire to kill the Abominatroll. So there is one special abomination that you may have if you have the bosses, and having 3 damage isn't going to put him down. But every other abomination, it will. This is a pretty cool skill. So those swords that I like that get 2 attacks, if you had +1 die on them and you're getting 6 attacks, and then you had super strength, you'd be getting 6 attacks that do 3 damage. And you could put anything down with just swords. Starts with A. This skill will list an equipment card. Your survivor will start the game with an item of this type pulled from the equipment deck. And the reason why I note pulled from the equipment deck is because this is a bonus item. If you have 4 survivors, normally you get 4 pieces of starting equipment. This is an extra piece of equipment, giving you 5 items instead of 4 to split amongst your survivors. You still get a starting item too, so this is pretty amazing. And something you should know, before a mission, you're allowed to freely trade amongst yourself and figure out who starts with what. It says so in the rulebook that, it's a cooperative game. You can distribute the equipment however you want. I like to use this to give somebody that really needs 2 weapons, 2 weapons. So example, let's say somebody started with a hammer, and I have an extra hammer. I might say, hey Clovis, we get to start with a hammer, and I got this hammer. Why don't you take both the hammers? And now Clovis throws out 4 dice at the beginning of the mission that does 2 damage. And yeah, he may be stuck with a sword and he's supposed to start with a hammer, but still, that's amazing. Anytime you can incorporate somebody that starts with something, you get 1 extra equipment item, which gives you a lot more choices and much better ways to load out your character. For example, I really like ranged characters. There's a character that starts with a longbow. So if I like 2 ranged characters, now I can have one that starts with a longbow and one that starts with a short bow. So both of them have the type of weapon they prefer. Steady hand. When making a ranged or magic attack, your misses will not hit survivors. And I don't know why. Maybe it's because it's the end of the slides. But there seem to be a little more typos in my slides right now. When making a ranged attack, your misses will not hit survivors. This does not affect Dragonfire. It's not a ranged or magic attack. It's a Dragonfire effect. Everything in the cell dies. Swordsman. You trade all melee weapons as though they have the dual wield symbol. You can now dual wield greatsword. The greatsword is a mediocre weapon, but you can now dual wield them for 10 dice, which is pretty cool. Are there any other weapons this applies to that I'm not thinking about? It has to be a weapon that you can get 2 of, and it has to not already have the dual wield symbol on it. I'm not sure offhand. Tactician. You can take your turn before or after any other survivor. If 2 survivors have this skill, the party will pick the order in which they're going to activate and win. This skill is useless if playing solo, because whenever it's your turn, if you control multiple characters, you get to pick the order in which they activate. And if you're playing solo, even if you're playing 6 characters, you still get to pick the order in which they activate. So this is a useless skill if you're playing solo. Taunt. You can use this skill once per turn for free. Select a zone in line of sight from your survivor. Give all zombies in that zone 1 extra activation. When they activate, they will move towards the taunting survivor, ignoring all other survivors as they move. Notes: if you taunt a wolf or a runner and you're close to it, it might move to your cell like you want, but it might still have another action to bite you, so be careful of that. Tough. Ignore the first wound you take from a zombie in every zombie phase. This is 1 wound per game round. So if a runner comes and bites you, and you're like, oh, I'm going to ignore that. And then they bite you again the next time their action comes up, and you're like, oh, I'm going to ignore that too because we're in a different zombie phase. No, you're not. It's still the same game round. I think my understanding is each round you get to ignore 1 wound. That's it. Not 1 wound per activation steps of the zombies. Trick shot. When dual-wielding combat spells or ranged weapons, you can pick different target zones for each weapon. So this is kind of like you got 2 guns, you got 2 crossbows, and you're pointing them out. Instead of shooting at the same cell, you move your arms wide, and you're like, I'm going to shoot those guys on the left with this thing. I'm going to shoot the guys on the right with this thing. And that's pretty cool. Or maybe you're dual-wielding fireball, which is awesome. You shoot the guy in front of you, and you shoot the guy behind you or the guy to the side of you. And I think this is a pretty cool skill. Zombie Link. Each time an extra activation card is drawn, you take a free turn, which means as many actions as you're supposed to get, before resolving the extra activation card. That's pretty cool. You pull extra activation runners, they're right in front of you. You get to kill them or run away before they activate. This is a pretty powerful skill. Notes: this does not trigger when you're out of models and must give extra activations. So you're in the red danger level, you put down 9 walkers. You're like, I only got 5. I'm going to have to give an extra activation. Johnny gets a free turn because of Zombie Link. No, he doesn't. That's not an extra activation card. That's a spawn card causing an extra activation. If you have anything to add to what I've said, or if you think I've messed up a rule, or if you just have some further questions, please let me know. And again, as always, thank you for watching.